Now that we have Zoom meetings, the gavel isn't all that useful.
Well, you'll get him back, and then you can whack him.
No quisiera que de nadie te acordaras. Tengo celos hasta del pensamiento que pueda recordarte a otra persona amada. Júrame que aunque pase mucho tiempo, pensarás en el momento en que yo te conocí. Mírame, pues no hay nada más profundo ni más grande en este mundo que el cariño que te di. Bésame con un beso enamorado como nadie me ha besado, que es del día en que nací. Quiéreme hasta en la locura. Y así sabrás la amargura que estoy sufriendo por ti.
Well, thanks to Rotarian James Williams. He's the operations manager at Opera San Jose, in collaboration with the Los Angeles Opera in presenting music by Latina composers. And that song was composed by Maria Grever and was released in 1927. So Placido Domingo sings that song almost in all of his concerts. I'll tell you more next week because we're a little bit behind here because we got to talking here. So welcome, fellow Rotarians and guests, to meeting number 5301. Our June 2nd birthday is Brenda Davis. She joined Rotary in 1995 and retired in 2006 after 39 years with Santa Clara County, 16 of which were as county recorder. She and Dawn live in their summers in Tacoma, Washington, and winters in their home in Saratoga. Does lots of gardening and swimming and so on, but she says she loves to Zoom in to our club meetings when she's up in Tacoma. So happy birthday, Brenda. Next, we've got Sal Pizarro. He's our resident mixologist, apparently.
What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Wanna know what's going on?
Fernando, I'm never going to miss hearing that song.
That's the 50th anniversary, you know, this year of that song by Marvin Gaye, questioning the Vietnam War.
I do know that, in fact. It's 1971. I don't know if you saw that recent series on music in 1971, but it's considered one of the greatest years of music history. So that's what's going on, but I've got some other things that I can show you here. And let's share my screen. And of course, you know, we're all just shaken by the tragedy, senseless tragedy last week at the VTA. Lots of people came out to a vigil last Thursday or last week. You can see the picture there at City Hall. And if you're looking to help, donations are being taken by Working Partnerships USA. They have their VTA Solidarity Fund. It's kind of a long URL there, but it's up there, and I'm sure we'll have it in our bulletin. And this one's an odd one that just came by my desk. Every Denny's in Santa Clara County, if you're dining in today, they're donating 50% of the proceeds to help the VTA survivors and their families. So, you know, Denny's, who knew? But I think that's great. Like I said, this is short notice, but if you have time and you want to go to Denny's today for a late lunch or dinner, feel free to do that. The money's going to some good. So on to happier news. Theater's coming back. Tabard Theater in downtown San Jose is going to be one of the first to be welcoming audiences back. They're opening Shylock this weekend. That's a co-production with Shakespeare Silicon Valley. And it's going to be live streamed, but they're also going to have tickets for vaccinated patrons in person. And they've got a couple of other things coming up on Mondays, well, specific Mondays, first Monday of the month. A jazz trio led by Gus Cambitz is going to be doing some traditional jazz standards, and that starts this coming Monday. Now, here's the thing. This is vaccinated people only. It's $10, but you got to be able to show proof of vaccination to get in. They won't be streaming this. Same thing that their jazz band, the 19, will return with the shows on July 24th and 25th, an evening show and a matinee on the Sunday in July, but those are also, you've got to show proof of vaccination to get in. So I think that's going to be the way things go for a while if you're wanting to get into live theater. And it's not the only stuff that's opening. Things are starting to open up again, and it's great. The San Jose Museum of Quilts and Textiles will reopen to the public June 18th. They've got some soft openings for members before that. They've got 3 new exhibitions around Americana with a lot of American quilt American flag art. Pretty amazing stuff if you want to take a look at it. This week, the South First Fridays Art Walk really comes back in earnest. A lot of galleries will be open. Of course, you've probably still got to have your masks on for a couple of weeks at least. But many things are going to be open on Friday night. If you're interested in Hamilton, tickets are on sale today. They went on sale for the run at San Jose Center for Performing Arts, October 12th through 31st. And History San Jose is going to be celebrating its 50th anniversary, just like what's going on June 18th with an ice cream social. And you can go to their website to get a very inexpensive ticket for that. Should be a fun day. And here's another little thing. Now, this isn't in downtown San Jose, but you can see downtown San Jose there. The new Legoland Discovery Center at the Great Mall in Milpitas. One of the features there that adults might enjoy is they've got recreations of all sorts of landmarks from San Jose, San Francisco, and Oakland in the space, all made out of Lego bricks. So you've got San Jose City Hall, the St. Joseph Cathedral Basilica, the San Jose Museum of Art, and even the Circle of Palms, and the Winchester Mystery House. It's really fun. You know, it's if you like that kind of thing, if you have grandkids or kids, it's fun to take them to. And I think it's really neat to look at these recreations. I could stare at them all day long. So that is what's going on. Thanks for letting me share all this, Fernando. Oh, he's muted.
You're muted.
Muted, Fernando.
Yeah. Thank you for keeping us informed all year long. This is your last presentation on my behalf. Next, we've got our outgoing youth exchange student, Miss Julia Casanova Moore. We sent her in 2019-20 to Logroño in north central Spain, capital of La Rioja, province famous for its wines. Julia, you ready to go?
Yep, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, hit it.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna start by sharing the screen and hopefully we can display it on mine. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen now, perhaps?
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see if I can find my presentation and we can present that to you guys. All right, here we go. So my Rotary Youth Exchange in Spain. So my exchange started even before I left for Spain. I was invited to go on a weekend camping trip with some of the inbound students that the San Jose Rotary were hosting at the time. And it was really nice because it was a very nice, soft introduction to what I would be experiencing once I went abroad in Spain. So I went to, as Mr. Zaswada said previously, Logroño, and you can see that on the left. It's in the northern region of Spain, right below Basque Country. And so on the right, that's my first host family. And they were very nice. They came with a little sign when I first touched down, and I ended up being very, very close to them. I still talk to them on a good basis, and we're very close. So they were definitely a highlight. This was the view outside of where I lived. So I lived in my first host family. It was really, really bordering the Basque Country. Like we actually lived inside of it, just on the other side. And it was very beautiful, vineyards all across, the mountains. The weather was really great. And it was really much different than what I'm experienced living in the city, right? Just vast rolling hills. So very pretty, but very different for sure. This is kind of downtown Logroño, what that looked like. And then these were the people who were living with me in Logroño. So on the very bottom, you'll see Sonia, she's from Virginia, and then Abby, who's also part of the San Jose Rotary. Up above, you'll see Joey, who's from Wisconsin, and then we have Coco, our Japanese exchange student to the left, and Jimmy, who's from Taiwan. Following that, after I had touched down and presented, of course, I started school, which was all in Spanish, and these are two of my closest friends. So it did take some time to assimilate, but once I did, it was truly an amazing experience. My host family brought me to a couple different places around Spain. So here we went to Bilbao. This is the Museo Guggenheim. We were able to take pictures there. It's very cool, all silver, very shiny. We also went to Zaragoza together. And this is in Logroño, since, you know, it's a very big wine production region. They, for their festivities, had a fountain full of wine. So that's me posing next to the fountain full of wine. This is my second host family, and you can see Coco again on the left. We went to a play and got ready. And so they just, you know, brought me out on different areas in the town. And oh, sorry. And different like that, really tried to integrate me, which is very nice. And then you can see on the right, Turkey, we'll get to that in a second. But then there's me on the right-hand side celebrating New Year's. And then of course, Thanksgiving isn't really celebrated in Spain. So me and my friends did a little Fruitsgiving. And so we, you know, shared fruit and had fruit because that was something that was easily accessible to us and, you know, got us all together, which was the whole point in the first place. This was my water polo team. So I did water polo all throughout high school before I left. And I knew that that was something that I didn't want to give up and I wanted to try in Spain. So I integrated myself and we did a couple tournaments and multiple games while I was there. It was very fun. Then I did a second trip to Zaragoza. This was a Rotary sponsored event from my host club in Spain. And I was really appreciative, especially the events hosted here. For example, the U70 one I mentioned previously, but also from the ones hosted there because there's all these other students living around Spain and it's not easy to see them because sometimes they're, you know, miles and miles away and it's hard for the travel. But when we were able to get together and all do things uniformly, it was very nice. Great way to interact and to meet new people. There's another one, a paddle event that we hosted benefiting charity. And then this is us on Haka, another group event. It's us posing with our flag. We all brought different flags to, you know, kind of share in the cultural exchange. This is another Rotary event that we went to Pamplona together. So we're able to kind of bond and see, you know, where the bulls run, the very famous Spanish tradition. Nice to see in person. And then, of course, inevitably, I had to come home. It was very sad because I had to leave a little prematurely. I was supposed to be there roughly 10 months over the summer, and I only ended up being there around 7. I didn't really get to say bye to anybody. However, we did contact them afterwards, and I was able to get here or home safe, which is good. But I did have a lot of luggage, as you could see.
Well, thank you very much, Julia. We appreciated Julia.
The student we were hosting, Tabitha from Belgium, you can see on the right.
Thank you
so
very
now
much,
I will be
Julia.
continuing
Can
my
you hear
study
me?
and love for travel and international affairs at GW, which is a school in Washington, D.C. And I'll be studying at the Elliott School of International Affairs specifically, kind of doing more exploration and more study into that aspect of my education. And so to conclude, I just wanted to thank all of Rotary for supporting me through this. This has been a dream of mine since middle school, so for a very, very long time. And you guys have been nothing but kind and supportive throughout my entire journey. So, muchas gracias. Os quiero agradecer por su apoyo durante todo mi camino en la educación porque me ha impactado muchísimo. Again, in English, that was thank you for your entire journey throughout this time of my education because it was very impactful. So I very much appreciate it. And I hope that other students continue to get to have this experience because it really kind of set the ground for the rest of my education. So thank you so much for having me.
All right, great to hear from you.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you very much. Next, we have Deanna Persai. She's the chair of the Rotary Climate Action Committee and mentor for Rotary and San Jose State, establishing a Rotary Act Club. Deanna, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, President Fernando.
Take it away.
Thank you. It's great to be here with all the fellow Rotarians. So Michael Conniff has been a wonderful mentor for me over the with the International House, and we got a San Jose State Rotaract Club going, and so he asked if I could be the mentor for the Rotaract Club, and they have done a phenomenal job. I'm going to hand it over to Jenna Prasadi, who is the president of the new Rotaract Club, and let me tell you a small story. That we have an environmental sustainability Rotary Action group, and the president in 2 years is Claire Nolette, and she got in touch with the San Jose Staters to see if they could help make a video for the House of Friendship International Conference coming up in June. So the San Jose Staters really stepped up, and we got some extra help from Michelle Acosta, as well as our new Red Badger, Michael Hubert. So I'm going to hand it over to Jenna if she's there to tell you a little bit about the San Jose State Rotaractors. Jenna, are you out there?
Yeah, hi. So my name's Jenna. I'm the president at the San Jose Rotary. This is our first semester, and we kind of wrapped that up. We were mainly doing speakers and such, and we were so fortunate to have Clary reach out to us, and she will be the director of the SRAG in the near future. So she helped us with the refrigerant management booth, and she asked us if we can help them just for a virtual booth and for the Rotary convention that's coming up. And so we'd like to show you the video that we worked on in collaboration with Rotarians Michael Hubert and Michelle Acosta from the Hubert Group. And please feel free to visit the refrigerant management booth. We also had our wonderful officer Audrey help out with the posters with the help of Michelle as well. And we worked on this during finals. So it was a struggle, but we got through it. Yeah. So thank you so much for this, Deanna.
Did you know that we only have 6 years to prevent the worst effects of global warming from becoming irreversible? While carbon dioxide is known to be the most significant greenhouse gas impacting global warming, CFCs have more than 11,000 times the global warming potential of carbon dioxide. But what are CFCs? Chlorofluorocarbons, also known as CFCs, or under the trademark Freon, are chemicals used in refrigerants, aerosols, and plastics. It was discovered in the 1970s that CFCs contribute to the depletion of the ozone layer, which causes harmful rays to pass into the atmosphere and accelerates global warming. This leads to increased incidence of skin cancer and cataracts in humans and damages plant life and ecosystems. Although CFCs have been banned from further production, the remaining stockpiles of cylinders and canisters remain a major threat to global warming and stratospheric ozone depletion. In fact, a recent MIT study found that continued emissions from stockpiled CFCs have a global warming potential of 9 billion metric tons of CO2. That's why Project Drawdown, a leading environmental think tank, lists refrigerant management as the 4th most important solution to effectively fight the climate crisis. So what can you do to help? Learn how your Rotary or Rotaract Club can start your own project and join the fight to safely collect cylinders and canisters of CFCs to be destroyed. By using the power of Rotary, we can create a safe and livable world for the future of the planet and for generations to come. To learn more about how to get involved, visit srag.org. For more information, contact Clary Nolette at clary.nolette@srag.org.
Thank you very much, Jenna, and thank you very much, Deanna. We're running a little short here, so let's move over to good luck with school, Jenna. Brenda Sweeney, she heads MIE CFO and provides CFO level expertise to emerging technology companies. She's going to talk about our spring barbecue. Are you there?
I'm here.
Brenda?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Okay, I got to talk fast because I don't want to hook. So it's a Rotary barbecue time, and it's a wonderful tradition. And this year we're going to incorporate some of the old and some of the new. The old, we're going to have drinks from the Shark Mobile. We're going to have dinner done by the executive chefs. We're going to have all-star service from the Red Badgers. The new, it's going to be social distance, masks, pods of 6 per table. And we're going to continue the party from May, and we're going to continue the fiesta theme. So please come dressed up, be festive. And we're going to have piñatas. no drive-through. You're going to come and enjoy the company. So sign up and we hope to see you there.
That's it. Okay,
Yeah.
well, don't forget that because of technical problems with our link, you have to call our Rotary office as soon as you can to register your attendance, or you can send an email to Marie at sjrotary.org so we can know how much food to buy and prepare. Don't wait until the last minute because a lot of this food has to be ordered well ahead of June 9th. So it's really important. Next, let me go over to talk about the next big project. There's a voting that's going on. You have to remember to use the green envelope that was sent to you. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, went with your dues. You can send it back with your dues when you pay, or if you're going to pay at the Rotary auction, you can use the yellow. Let me see if I can get that. There you go. It's a yellow ballot, and you can use that and turn it in at the barbecue. Or if you're not going to do either one of those, you can do it by Survey Monkey according to the link that's being put into the chat box icon. Really important because if we don't have enough people responding to this, we may have to cancel it. So we're counting on every one of you who hasn't registered yet to do so. Call or send an email to Marie at sjrotary.com. As you know, the club's funding policy is usually limited to our annual gala, and we try to avoid what we call money ask fatigue, which can result from separate requests for money because of the many catastrophes which occur with alarming frequency. However, last week's VTA shootings are quite different. The families of the 9 murdered victims are not only grieving, but they are financially compromised by the loss of their breadwinners. So you're encouraged to join community efforts to donate to funds which support the families of the VTA victims in ways that you think are appropriate. There's a couple of things you can do. You can Google, how can I help the VTA shooting victims and their families? That'll bring up some websites, GoFundMe and others who have vetted fundraisers in their websites. Or you can contact our own Elizabeth Monley with the Disaster Relief Committee, as long as what we are doing meets with the approval of the club, the foundation, and our club director. But the key here is get involved and trying to help them out. This is an unusual event and they need our help. And finally, June is the LGBTQ Pride Month. It celebrates the dignity, the self-affirmation, equality, and increased visibility of our lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender folks. It started off as a protest in 1969 and marks the start of the riots in which the queer community responded to a police raid at that Stonewall Inn, a bar in Greenwich Village in New York City. It and the rainbow flag have become an expression of LGBTQ pride throughout the United States and Europe. And so also don't forget, it's been 100 years since that Tulsa race massacre, and it's just an incredible thing to watch, and it's been featured on History Channel. And you might want to take a look at it to see how awful life has treated some of our citizens, our Black citizens. Next, I think that all of you understand that this is really an important issue, and it's not just that Black Lives Matter, but until we understand this as just a mantra for all of us, it becomes impossible to reach an understanding and accommodation to our Black citizens who have suffered so much for so long and still are able to rise above all of this obstacles of racism. So your help is really appreciated. We've got coming up Suzanne St. John Crane. She joined Rotary in 2010. As you know, she's the CEO of American Leadership Forum, and she happens to be the chair of the program committee. She'll be introducing our speaker. So Suzanne, I'm giving you a little bit of head time there. Can you do it?
All set. Thanks a lot, President Fernando. And great to see you all today. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Ralph Richard Banks, who goes by Rick, who is the Jackson Eli Reynolds Professor of Law at Stanford Law School and a professor by courtesy at the Stanford Graduate School of Education. He's the founder and faculty director of the Stanford Center for Racial Justice, a new initiative that aims to democratize knowledge so that American society can work better for everyone. Professor Banks is also the author of the trade book, Is Marriage for White People? How the African-American Marriage Decline Affects Everyone, described by the LA Times as a must read. Professor Banks is currently at work on a new book that he's going to give us a bit of a preview of today, The Miseducation of America, The True Cost of College Admissions, and the Crisis of Democracy. This book will explain why and how education now functions less as an antidote to inequality than as a co-conspirator. At Stanford, Professor Banks teaches the 14th Amendment, family law, and a variety of courses related to race, law, and inequality. He graduated from Harvard Law School with honors and received his bachelor's and master's from Stanford University. Please help me in welcoming my friend and ALF fellow from Class 39, yay, Class 39, Rick Banks. Take it away, Rick.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I just got a sign saying that I'm muted, but I thought I unmuted myself. Okay, great. So I understand that we end at 1:15 sharp. So I'll try to be brief in the hope of saving some time for question and answers. I'm delighted to be able to engage with you all on this day. So what I'm writing about is education. And this is an issue which I think embodies one of the challenges of our nation and one of the challenges of our lifetimes. And this is especially important during this year when, for many reasons, this has been one of the most challenging years, I think, in any of our lives, in which we have been forced to reflect on the ways in which society doesn't work for everyone, the ways in which we need society to work for everyone. It causes us to reflect on the ways in which we're bound together and intimately connected to each other. So the working title of this book is The Miseducation of America, The True Cost of College Admissions and the Crisis of Democracy. This is a project that's been percolating within me for many years because it melds my academic work as a law professor along with my history of working in education and also my life story, frankly, which one begins to reflect on as the years go by and as I watch my children grow and develop. Even more, this book aims to sort of situate some of my experiences and my life in the context of changes within American society. So that's the approach of the book. This will be, the publisher will be Hachette, which is a big publisher. They publish Malcolm Gladwell, who you may know about. So we're trying to reach a broad audience. So let me begin with my own story. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, Mount Sinai Hospital, December 1964. It was right after some of the most significant legislation ever passed in our nation's history, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is the law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of race and other characteristics across a broad domain of American life. Shortly after I was born, we would pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was another landmark piece of legislation, unprecedented. Which was meant to make the 15th Amendment, which is the constitutional provision concerning the right to vote, make real the 15th Amendment and make it possible for Black people in particular to be able to vote. My parents were both old enough to have not been able to vote, even though they were old enough to do so and would have liked to have done so. And then a few years after that, of course, the Fair Housing Act of 1968 was passed. This was a trio of unprecedented laws meant to expand opportunity for people of all races, but particularly of African Americans, given that our society, since its founding, had relied in some sense on a racial caste system where we had a hierarchy based on race. These laws were very welcome. My parents were refugees from the Jim Crow South, where rights were in short supply. My father's family quite literally fled racial terrorism in the South. When he was a little boy, in fact, they lived in Georgia. And this is a story that became, I only understood it many years after he first told me. My father was a little boy, his brother, who was much older, his oldest brother, made what turned out to be a big mistake, which is that he wore a new suit into their small town outside Atlanta. In the early part of the 20th century, a Black boy wearing a new suit in Atlanta was forbidden. That was an affront to the norms of Jim Crow. My father's brother was met with cries of, "Who's the nigger in the new suit?" Those cries were followed up with rocks and greater threats of violence. My father remembers carrying the shotgun shells that he would give to his brother as his brother defended himself from the mob that had followed him back home. Before the sun came up the next day, my father's brother was on a train. He happened to disembark that train in Cleveland. And that's how our family ended up in Cleveland. My father's brother got off the train there. Soon the entire family followed. They would never return to Georgia again. My mother's family came from Alabama, outside of Montgomery. There's stories there as well, but the upshot of it is that they too were fleeing the racial terrorism that prevailed in the South. When they arrived in Cleveland, and when I was born, and when my siblings were born, they justifiably believed that they were in a land of opportunity. The Civil Rights Acts made possible for me and for my siblings, I have 3 sisters, lives that would have been unimaginable 20 years earlier. More specifically, education is what made my life possible. If it weren't for the educational opportunities that I had growing up in the wake of the Civil Rights era, I would not be here with you today. Had I been born 20 years earlier, my life would have turned out entirely differently. What's surprising, though, is that my life would have also turned out entirely differently, likely, had I been born 20 years later. You see, I had the good fortune.
Really? So you kind of got to see how it got.
I had the good fortune to advance through a window of opportunity that was opened by the Civil Rights era, but that 20 years later would actually close. The educational opportunities that allowed me to go to college and then to law school and ultimately to be here, those opportunities would not, as a practical matter, be open to me today, were I born now, or were I born 20 years ago, were I a young man now, compared to when I in fact was born. So the story of the book is really a story about how that window of opportunity opened, and more importantly, how it closed. How was it that education was able to propel people like me into lives that their parents would have been unable to imagine, yet it has ceased to do that for current generations? That's the big story that the book charts. And the answer, I'll hit the high points in this discussion, and we can go into much more discussion in the Q&A. The answer to that question is actually a paradox, which is that the window of opportunity was opened by the same forces or principles that would close that window of opportunity decades later. And those 2 principles, in short, are the ideals that our universities hold dear, and which many of us hold dear. On the one hand is the principle of diversity. We all embrace diversity. or at least we should, or at least we say we do. And universities embrace diversity. When universities embrace diversity, when I was applying to college, it had the effect of expanding opportunity. Now diversity, though, actually has the effect of constricting opportunity. It makes it less likely that this little Black boy, had he been born in inner city Cleveland, would be able to make it to somewhere like Stanford. Similarly, the other ideal that universities embrace is that of merit. That's the idea that universities should admit the highest achieving students, and they should evaluate applicants on the basis of their academic achievement. That's a laudable principle. And it was an extraordinary development when universities did begin to admit students on the basis of their academic achievement, because that approach, which is actually fairly recent, displaced a system where universities had admitted students based on their family pedigree, where the children of elite families went to college and the children of other families, for the most part, did not. So this principle of academic achievement, it expanded opportunity for people like me, yet now, just as with diversity, it has come to limit or narrow opportunity so that it's ever less likely that someone like me would be able to make it to someplace like Stanford. So that's the story that I tell in the book in many chapters, which we can delve into in Q&A. Is merit and diversity opened opportunity initially, but then constricted opportunity later. And the big question is, well, how did that happen? How did these laudable principles constrict opportunity? And the short answer there is that what happened within universities and the effect of these principles within universities was actually influenced by changes that occurred outside of universities in the society. And the central change in American society over the last half century, I would argue, is the growth of economic inequality. Economic inequality in American society now is greater than it has ever been in our lifetimes. Let me, I'm gonna try to share screen just for a moment to discuss or show some of these changes. Okay, hold on. Now, of course, I'm having trouble with my slide. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So this is, I just want to give you a sense of how things have changed. We see over the last 50 or so years, incomes for the top earners in society, that's the 90th percentile, those incomes have increased dramatically.
Rick, are you sharing a slide? Because we can't see it.
I am.
Yeah, I can't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hit the share button. Now you can.
There we go. Thanks.
Can you see it now? You should be able to see it now. Everyone can see it now, I hope?
Yep.
Okay.
You're good.
So incomes have increased.
Go back to where you were. Now you're on a.
Are you seeing the right thing? You're seeing the slide presentation, correct?
No, I'm seeing a weird JPEG, but you had it up for a second.
Oh, darn. Hold on. This is what happens when I don't have my assistant with me.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Let me, I'm going to stop screen sharing, and then I'm going to share screen again very quickly. I will get this up. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to share screen again. Okay, so now everyone see the slide?
No.
No.
Hold on, you don't. I'm gonna share screen.
Thanks, Rich.
Hold on.
Good
I'm
times. We can be patient.
Class is done here, so I'm out of the practice of sharing screen, or maybe I just will give up on the share screen in a minute. So now I'm sharing screen. There you go.
Yep.
And you see that, and now
Good job.
and I'm going to put it into I'm going to put it into the actual display so you can see it now. Correct?
Yep.
Okay. So we see incomes have increased, and this may be old hat to many of you, but this is extraordinary change in society, that the incomes at the top have grown incredibly. This shows that most of the income gains of the last nearly 50 years have gone to those who are already at the top of the income spectrum, with the top 1% alone garnering nearly 40% of the increases in income. And you see the bottom 90% has just as a small sliver of increases in income. These are all different measures of how our society has grown more unequal. And the big part of the project of this book is to show the extent of that growth of inequality and the far-reaching consequences of that for education, which we think is usually to function as an antidote to inequality. So here's just another visualization of the same idea. We see the growth in income of the top 1% versus everyone else, extraordinary over time compared to 1980. When I entered Stanford University as an undergraduate in the 1980s, the inequalities were just a fraction of what they would later become. So, and I wanted to talk just a little bit about incarceration here, because incarceration is, in my sense, the most dramatic example of the growth of inequality in our society, right? And we think of incarceration as affecting mostly African Americans, and it does disproportionately affect African Americans. But the reality is that we incarcerate more people of all races than any other country in the world that we would want to compare ourselves to. And that's relevant because prison is actually where you put people as a society when the people don't have an economic place in the society. So the growth of incarceration in the United States is probably the most vivid or visceral example we have of how inequality has grown in our nation. Not only do we incarcerate more people than we did previously, we incarcerate more people than any other nation. Again, we are literally off the chart. And this is true, of course, if we focus on African Americans, but it would be equally true if we focused on white Americans. We incarcerate more non-minorities than any other nation in the world. And for those groups as well, jail is where we put people that we don't have a place for economically, where society has ceased to offer them opportunity. And and this is relevant to higher education, because one of the changes that we've seen as society has grown more unequal is that education and income have also become more closely intertwined. Let me repeat that. Education and income have become more closely intertwined. Sometimes we might imagine that it was always the case that people who were more educated earn more money, say, who were less educated. And to some extent, that's true. But in fact, historically, the differences in income between the more and less educated people, they were slight, in fact. Now, the differences in income between more and less educated people have grown considerably. You see not only a divide between college and not going to college, you see a divide between a lower ranked college and a higher ranked college. You see a great divide between college and graduate school. So you see much more differentiation in terms of income on the basis of education. And that is kind of the linchpin of how educational institutions in American society have changed and how the students they serve has changed. So let me stop the share so I can go back and join you. Hopefully everyone can see me now. What's happened is that as income disparities have grown and as education has become more important, the affluent people in our society, which is to say a lot of people that I know and that you all know, affluent people in society have doubled down on education. They put more money into the education of their children, more time, more energy into the education of their children. And the consequence has been that children have begun to sort themselves now more than ever across universities on the basis of the academic achievement of the children and in turn on the basis of the parents' economic status. So the consequence, and there's a lot to unpack there, but one consequence of this is that the most elite universities now, places like Stanford, but also, much less, many other schools as well, these universities disproportionately serve children from the most affluent and privileged families in the United States and the world. And those institutions, which are serving those privileged families, those institutions themselves have also become much, much richer over the last half century than they were previously. So what we have then, and I'll stop in just a minute so we can have a discussion, unpack some of this. What we have then is a system where the universities have become extraordinarily unequal on every dimension. And the students have sorted themselves and been sorted among universities in an unequal way as well. So that the richest students and the most privileged students disproportionately attend the richest universities. And the most disadvantaged students, the students who actually need the education the most, they attend the least wealthy, least well-resourced universities. Now, if you look at that development, one can't help but worry about the consequences for American society of an educational system that gives the most opportunities, the most resources to those who already have the most, and to those who have the least, well, we give them the least. So in short, that's the problem in higher education now. It's a problem of a misdirection of resources of elite universities. The consequences of that are myriad. It reinforces economic inequality among Americans. It reinforces racial inequalities within our nation, because African-American students, like the kid that I was some decades ago, they're practically non-existent, frankly, at places like Stanford. They're dwindling, rather, at places like Stanford. And I think this development also distorts education, because what we've developed is a system in which universities and students are all competing for status and trying to be the top place or be at the top place if you're a student. And they've lost sight in some ways of what the values of education are and should be. So that's all the problem. The book, of course, is going to also discuss solutions and where to go forward. But one thing I would like to do is get as many ideas as possible from you guys about how we can right this situation. Okay, so I will stop there, throw it open to questions, conversations, confusion, uncertainty, criticism.
Love it, Rick. Thank you so much. That was a lot to unpack, as you said. So really appreciate your synopsis of highlights of the book and for your courage in sharing your own story. I think it's, as you know, it's certainly a piece of ALF that we appreciate is what are our own personal paths and stories and how do they lead us to where we are today? So several questions coming in the chat. First one I'd love to ask you, So I think Arthur had asked this, what's your opinion of open admissions in schools like CCNY replacing merit-based admissions?
That's a great question. And some sort of open admissions system, I think, some sort of open admission system could be desirable. Here's there are two hard issues there, right? So one is that we have a system that's been constructed where the heart of the system is actually how many students can you turn away? Which, I mean, that's kind of what most universities, most private universities are striving to be more competitive, more selective. They want as many people to apply as possible and to admit as few as possible. And that's something that we should not, we want to fully recognize how central that is to how universities actually operate, right? And that's a political problem, that's a cultural problem, that's something about the way we view education, that even students, when they apply to a school, if they know nothing else about the school, they will assume that the school, that the value of the institution is directly related to the difficulty of gaining admission. So that's one problem, is we have to undo that intertwining of selectivity and perceived quality. And then the second problem is that, the issues that students confront when they enter university is it's not just gaining access, it's also support once they get there. Now, if you have children who are coming from a family where the parents are college educated, they have an environment that knows how the system works, how education works, how to move ahead, how to go from the classroom to the workplace, then that student will be fine in a setting of open admissions. But if you have students who are low income, first generation, racial minority, they have lots of talent, but they don't know how to develop it, then you also need to provide some guidance, some coaching, some advising, some supports for them so that they can make it in a system that their parents or their families are unfamiliar with. And that's one of the things that we don't, frankly, do a good job of now as a nation. We have a bunch of systems that are set up so that people who already have the resources they need, well, they'll be fine. But people who don't have the resources, well, we say if they didn't make it, well, maybe they didn't have it, right? Or they weren't the right stuff. But in fact, there's a lot of talent out there, and we have a long way to go to try to make the opportunity that our institutions provide be as universal as the talent that exists among our people. But to close that gap between talent on the one hand and opportunity on the other, we need supportive structures that work for students, that help them to realize their potential. That's just the challenge that education presents and the opportunity education presents for society.
Excellent. Thanks for that answer. And not another question here, not inconsiderable number of the people who have access to those elite places are perfectly comfortable, right? And are happy with the stratification of wealth and resources. How do we convince them that it's bad since they have the most power to change circumstances?
That's another excellent question. And I'll just say that I kind of go back to my childhood here. And I think of when, I'm at the park and I'm playing a game and playing basketball, you're playing any game with the ball. At some point as a child, you realize that just because you own the ball and maybe you brought the ball to the game, if you don't run the game in a way that works for everyone, then at some point the game will break down and then no one gets to play, right? So the moral of that story is that even if you see the system as serving you or people like you well, at some point we have to realize that if we don't have a society that works well enough for enough people, this project might just come to an end. And that would have seemed, unrealistic maybe 10 years ago to say that. But right now, I think people are aware that we can't take for granted the stability of our institutions or even the continuation or the sustainability, if you will, of our society. And one of the challenges that we have to grapple with is how to make the society work for everyone. And education is one primary way in which we do that. And if we can make it work for everyone, that's ultimately a situation from which we will all benefit, right? One of the wonderful things about education is that at its core, it's not a zero-sum sort of game, right? We all benefit from everyone else being educated, right? So if we can distribute education more equitably, if we can develop more talent among all populations within our nation, that won't require, quote, the winners currently giving up anything. It will actually provide an opportunity to enrich us all because we'll have a more vibrant nation that'll be more able to compete and produce in the decades to come. And that's really the source of stability that I think we need to focus on.
Well said. No, I appreciate that. And as a first generation college graduate whose parents had no clue how to guide me through, I appreciate that it isn't just a one and done, right? It's not, let's just get them into college and then off and running. You need that mentorship and that guidance. So several people are asking me privately, when's the book coming out? I bet you get that question a lot.
It'll come out as soon as I finish it, which hopefully will be this calendar year. But not before that, and then it'll be 6 months later than that. So 2022, as hard as that is to believe.
Yeah, crazy. Oh, awesome. We look forward to that. And can you name specifically, Rick, you may have done this, I apologize if I missed it as I was navigating these questions, but what systems or mechanisms were in place for you as a student that you're saying are no longer available to students now? Are there specific things that window that was open for you to attend college and thrive and be successful? What no longer is available to students today?
Excellent question. Well, in short, competition has increased dramatically now. Is one thing. I would not have, I wouldn't be accepted to Stanford today because competition for spots has increased so dramatically, frankly. In the 1980s, Stanford, served students throughout the United States. Now, Stanford increasingly, and other schools as well, draw students from throughout the world. So the population of students vying to get in has increased dramatically. Not only has the US population grown, but there's this world population that now appears on campus. Whereas the slots at major universities have practically not increased, almost not at all. They've increased a little, but not very much. So the demand for the education has grown dramatically while the supply of educational opportunities has not kept pace. This seems, it seems normal from within education, but once you step outside of these institutions, it seems kind of perverse that we have something that's become ever more important, yet the primary providers of that good are actually focused on limiting access to it rather than expanding access to it. So I just think I would not have been, I would not have made it through the funnel. But that's not because Stanford or other institutions have changed, but precisely because they haven't, right? That things outside the university changed and they didn't change in response to those changes outside of the university. One just quick example of that is that the gap in achievement between advantaged classes or privileged families, so to speak, or children of privileged families and children of less privileged families, those gaps were minimal 50 years ago compared to what they are now. In other words, the changes outside of the university have made it more difficult for anyone from a less advantaged background to compete with the children from the more advantaged background, because those families have so many more resources in all sorts of ways that they can invest in their child's education.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the core, the chief central dynamic that has led to education becoming what I call a luxury good.
Right.
Right.
Are you able to stay beyond the 1:15 time frame, Professor?
Yes, I can. Yes, I'm happy to. I see it is 1:13 right now.
Yeah. Well, let me just say thank you, and thank you, Suzanne, for fielding all these various questions and phrasing them in a way that's intelligible. Professor, thank you again. A fascinating program, and it certainly puts a spotlight on a lot of the issues that those of us not in education as an administrator wouldn't give much thought to, but now that you mention it, it makes perfect sense. You know, we made a contribution on your behalf and on behalf of our program speakers to a nonprofit called Our City Forest, which has planted or will plant 46 shade trees in East San Jose, along with another 26 trees total for 72, to combat what we call heat islands and to maybe address climate change and improve our neighborhoods and provide some habitat for wildlife. So thank you very much for coming today and enlightening us with your presentation, and good luck with finishing that book. Next week, we've got our spring barbecue, so there's no club meeting. Once again, no club meeting at noon. We will meet at the History San Jose for a spring barbecue. But remember, you got to register for the barbecue so as soon as possible, because we need to know how many people to buy food for. If you don't tell us, we won't have enough food, and you can't just show up and expect to eat if you didn't let us know you're coming. So register, call our office, check with Marie, or send her an email, marie@sjrotary.org, or you can call any one of us, but somehow or other get your information into us right away. It's important. We risk not having a barbecue if not enough of us registered. So that's it. Thank you very much for coming. As I like to say, to paraphrase my favorite immigrant governor, hasta la vista, Rotarians. The formal Zoom meeting is over, and now back to Professor Banks.
Okay, hasta la vista, baby. We'll be back.
Thank you so much, Rick. If you have a couple more minutes, there are some other questions in here.
Yeah, I was just looking at the chat. I wanted to save all the questions in the chat because this is great stuff.
Actually, Greg Yoder, who's one of our members, had a question about the Freedmen's Bureau schools after the Civil War.
Yep.
How did those come about, and what can you tell us?
I'm actually debating with how much history to have. I mean, the short story there is that the aftermath of slavery was actually maybe the greatest expansion of literacy in the history of our nation. There was an extraordinary number of schools established, and also universities were established for a variety of reasons, not only for African Americans, but universities were established throughout the nation. So that was a great flowering of education, which in a sense, reflected the view even then that, education in some way was essential to freedom. And slaves, of course, were prohibited from learning to read, and Black people generally were restricted in just the ability to learn. So there is a way in which, education was intertwined with the Black freedom struggle, and was also intertwined with ideas of human flourishing and growth. So that was a time of great optimism, in a sense. The history of the more recent history I'm telling, though, is actually a history where education became more relevant to economic outcomes in particular.
Mhm.
Right? And that's really a more recent story. Sometimes imagine that that was always the case, but it wasn't always the case that college graduates make twice as much as high school graduates. That's a recent in our lifetime story.
Right, right. And I love how you framed it that, it's I forget exactly how you said it, but it's the fact that colleges haven't changed that is the problem, right?
Yep.
Like the world is changing and colleges haven't. I'm just thinking, and I know there's other Rotarians in here that are going through this too. I have a junior, right? She's going to be a senior, and actually today is her last day of school. So the college race starts. She has a 4.0, and she's being told that, yeah, she's not going to be able to get into, quote, good universities.
Yep.
What the heck, right? Is this part of the problem? My kid is going to be struggling because she doesn't have a 4.5. Is there not enough of a market? There's not enough of of supply in terms of college, to sit and nurture kids that are sharp, that are motivated. Somebody, I think Carl was talking about what happened to hard work. There are people out there working very hard.
And
they can't get in, like you said.
Yep. And this is actually a story. I mean, my big argument here, frankly, is that at the end of the day, we need to actually de-stratify higher education. In other words, we have too much inequality among institutions of higher education, just as we have too much economic inequality in society. And so we need a little flattening of the higher education system. And that would actually go a long way toward alleviating some of these problems.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate, I think Jay's asking the same thing. Is there evidence of racism contributing to the reduction of availability of quality education in the US today? It's another question that's interesting.
That's a big question. I'm not sure how to take that. We have all manner of, there are all manner of influences and policies that actually lead to our having what, more than half a century after Brown v. Board of Education declared segregated schools unconstitutional, we still do have a system that is racially segregated and is also socioeconomically segregated. And that's true from primary schools up through secondary schools and through universities, frankly. If you look at the caliber of a university in terms of the resources that the university has and the rankings, that is inversely related to the representation of Black students, say, and also inversely related to the representation of low-income students.
Right.
So the less advantaged you are, the more likely you are to attend a less well-resourced school, whereas the more resourced schools have the more privileged students. That's true at the university level, and is also true at the primary and secondary school level.
Right.
If you're from a family that can afford to buy a home in Palo Alto or somewhere similar, you probably get a pretty good education. If you're from a family that cannot afford to buy a home in one of those neighborhoods or afford private school tuition, then you may not get so great an education. So these are problems that are apparent throughout the system and at every phase.
Yeah. Have you studied at all just how state universities, community colleges fit into this and are a solution when you've got elite colleges that are so, as you said, the funnel is getting more and more narrow? How do state universities and community colleges level the playing field?
That's a great question. And that's what so I do think one of the changes we've seen over the last, again, half century is that the private universities have outpaced the public universities, so that the public universities they serve more low-income students, they serve more racial minority students, but they're also less well-funded and have fewer resources in many ways than the private universities. So that's not a good thing. We do need to reinvest in education as a public good, if you will, or as a common undertaking, something in which we're all invested. We can't simply leave it to the market. We do need to think about how to harness community colleges to provide more opportunity and pathways to four-year degrees than they currently do. it is the case that a substantial portion, maybe as many as half of all college students are actually in community colleges, and those are also the least advantaged students, the students who have the highest need. But then community colleges are also the schools that we give the fewest resources to. So again, we have a system that the market has produced, but which is sort of perverse in the sense that we give the most resources to those who already have the most resources, and we give the least to those who already have the least. And that system must change if we're to make it work for everyone.
Right. Curious about Prop 16, right? It did not pass in California. What's your reflection on that in terms of the need for some kind of an affirmative action in California? Was it the right legislation? I'll just say candidly, I was intrigued by the fact that, I think Arthur's bringing this up a little bit too, that there were, I live in San Jose, went down to Campbell, and there were just campaigns of folks who were against Prop 16 and, did not want affirmative action reinstated.
Yep.
And they were of Asian descent. It was really interesting to me. I was like, everyone that's handing me a brochure is of Asia. It was a clear campaign move. What are your reflections on that?
Who were the people? I'm sorry, say that again.
It was the folks of Asian descent, right? Asian Americans that were handing these, were very determined about that. There's a lot of nuance to this, right? Affirmative action and around, who gets in, and is it just based on merit and hard work, and should that be the way it is? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so there's what is currently pending a lawsuit, which the Supreme Court will likely be hearing against Harvard University, which was filed by a group called Students for Fair Admissions. And they're representing Asian American applicants to Harvard who were denied admission. And the remedy that they're calling for is an absolute end to any race-based affirmative action by the university, right? They don't even want the university to be able to know the race of students who apply there. So that's kind of the one, like a concrete legal example of the dynamic you're talking about, because Asian American applicants to selective universities as a group, they have stronger academic credentials than the student, than the applicant groups, than applicants as a whole. Yet they're not as well represented in the student bodies of universities, or they're not admitted in the way you might expect given their academic credentials. So that's the problem, right? Is that you have these students who are applying, they say we're really strong applicants, but they're admitted at lower rates than other groups, and then they blame race-based affirmative action for their lower likelihood of admission. But the reality there, though, is that there are also lots of other things that keep them out of universities. At Harvard, for example, there are more students who are admitted as athletic recruits than there are students who are admitted to affirmative action. There are more students who are admitted because their parents went to the university than are admitted through race-based affirmative action. So we have lots of different channels or avenues into the university. And you have these other avenues, athletic recruits, for example, and so-called legacy admits whose parents went to the university. Those are actually pretty big factors at many universities across the nation. And those also favor people who are disproportionately socioeconomically affluent, right? And primarily white, right? So those practices favor primarily white people who are very affluent, and maybe have been very affluent for many generations even. So it is sort of narrow to focus only on the issue of race-based affirmative action and see that as a primary impediment for Asian Americans. There are these other factors as well. Again, what we need to do, though, more broadly, I think, is we do need to de-stratify higher education. In other words, we have too much inequality among institutions. It should not matter so much in our society where you go to school. What should matter is what you learn there. But we have a society now where the priority has been accorded to where you go to school. And that's what the students want, right? Is a name brand. And that becomes a status marker that sort of signifies your worth as a person, if you will. And, my argument is going to be that that's a system in which we all lose, right? That's not the system we should want to create. We should want to create a system where education is more plentiful and that people have more opportunities and there are more different types of institutions that can actually meet their needs and enrich their lives.
And I see the folks are putting the tuition they've paid, right, for college, for their college education. And, I think you touched on this a little bit, Rick, and Heather McGee, who wrote the book, The Sum of Us, which I just love, talks about when you do not have generational wealth, right, which the African-American families do not. If you watch the Tulsa, documentary, you'll then you are straddling debt for your entire career potentially, right? Versus those of us that are lucky enough to have parents that hand us $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 or whatever it is to help pay for college. It reminds me of her analogy with the public pool, right? So thousands of public pools across the country that were of great public good. When those became integrated, suddenly the parks and rec departments in communities were shutting down the pools. Yes. But you could go pay to go, to a country club so you could enjoy a pool. And again, that's benefiting those of us with means. How, if you could change admissions today, how would you change it, Rick? What's, you could wave the magic wand, what would you do?
Yeah, well, we can't, if I could wave a magic wand, that's a good one. I would, again, I think we do need to, the mistake we've made, frankly, is that we've tried to focus too much on how to ration a scarce resource. That is that we have this hierarchy and the students want to get into the quote top schools. And we tried to figure out, well, how do we ration it fairly? We spent too much time trying to figure out how to ration the scarce resource and not enough time trying to figure out how to make the resource less scarce. And that's what we need to do. Is there actually are a lot of universities in this country. There are many different educational institutions. We need to bolster those that maybe don't have as much in terms of resources. And that might entail some redistribution, frankly, away from those who have a lot in terms of resources. The endowments of places like Stanford, for example, which is, I say this because this is just my academic home, so I can talk about this place. It has increased many-fold in the last 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, so that, now we're in the tens of billions of dollars of endowment, and the university raises $1 billion a year. In addition to all of the tuition and other government support and financial aid and so forth that comes in. And it's not clear that adding to the wealth of the richest universities is actually serving the nation's interests. And perhaps it's time we need to redistribute some of the resources among institutions the same way I think we're recognizing in society now that among individuals, maybe we need some redistribution as well.
Outstanding. Hey, it's 1:31. I could keep talking to you, Rick, and listening to you, but I know you have things that you need to do, like enjoy summer. Because I know
this is going to be a good time to get some work done. But you all have this has been a good prompt.
Oh,
so thank you.
Good. We look forward to the book, and thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. And thank you again, Suzanne. You make us all look good. Thank you very much. Have a nice
Thank you so much.
Rest of the week, and good luck with that book.
Take care. Talk to you soon.
We're working on
it. Be well.
Okay. So, Suzanne, can you all save the chat and maybe send it to me? Can you do that?
I think so. Is Leslie on still? Let's see. Because I'm not running the meeting, but if Leslie or John During are still on, I can ask.
Okay, yeah. Great. I'm just looking at, I don't know how to, I tried to do something, but I don't know how to do stuff.
Yeah. We'll have the chat sent. Leslie will get it from me and she'll send it on to you.
Oh, perfect.
Perfect.
You're good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Thank
Take care,
you.
guys.
Okay, have a good one.